Folks, I can get the same house cheaper now. I'll explain what I mean and then get into the latest home prices and insights for York Region for week ending July 30th, 2025. If you want to speak directly with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video, below in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. You know, part of the offer process, when you think about putting in an offer together or accepting an offer, there's price point, there's shadows, there's deposit, there's all sorts of factor. Closing date is also really, really important. A typical, average closing date across the GTA is somewhere between 30 and 60 days. But every now and then, there's a buyer requesting a long closing date, much more than 3, 4, sometimes 5 months down the road. And from a seller point of view, I could see the allure of a long closing date, the comfort in having lots of time before you have to move out of the home that you're in. I can see, and most sellers in this market also understand selling first is safer than buying first. So most sellers are on the market, they've not purchased yet. So a long closing date allows the seller plenty of time to find a home, buy, look at multiple properties, buy, and line up the closing dates way down the road without a lot of pressure. So I see the allure of a long closing date, but man, the longer the closing date, the potential for things to go wrong also increase the longer the closing date. For example, when the buyer puts an offer on your home, I'm assuming, especially if they're a Sears buyer, they have a pre-approval in place. Well, that pre-approval has a time limit. And many times, if you have a long closing date, that pre-approval has expired by the time closing date and the mortgage needs to be put in place. So there's things that can go wrong in there in getting reapproved if the buyer's financial position has changed. And the more time you give, the more potential for the buyer's financial position could change. These could be things beyond the buyer's control, like the buyer losing the job, the main breadwinner losing their job. This is beyond the buyer's control. But the longer the closing date, there's more opportunity for that. That's just one example. There's many examples of things that can go wrong. We recently experienced, we were in a position, we represented the seller, an offer came in with a long closing date. I explained to our seller client the pros and cons of a long closing date. I explained the potential pitfalls in all sorts of things happening before closing date. But the seller opted for the long closing date, our client, because of the comfort of all the time in finding a property because they hadn't purchased yet. And it made sense. And they had lived in their home for many, many years. So just the thought of moving was daunting. And the more time they had, the more comfortable they were with things. So we went for the long closing date. As we came up to closing date, I receive a call from the buyer's agent saying their client, the buyer, is trying to get out of the deal. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We have an agreement in place. We've waited all these months for closing date, and now you're trying to get out of the deal? Like, what's going on? And the agent says to me, the buyer says that he can buy the same home cheaper. He could buy the same home now for about $100,000 cheaper. And you know what? The buyer was not wrong. It was a fact that you could buy now the same home about $100,000 cheaper. But we had an agreement in place. It is not the seller's fault that the market changed. The house hasn't changed, just Values have changed in that area. What if values went up? Could the seller say, I'm not selling it to you at that price anymore? Give me $100,000 more. I can get more for my house now. No, the seller couldn't say that. Just like the buyer can't say, I want out of the deal because I can get it for less. In the end, we closed. But boy, was there a ton of stress on both sides of that transaction with the buyer trying everything possible to pull out of that deal. So these are just some of the pitfalls of a long closing. I can see the allure of having all this time, but the closer to when the offer is actually accepted, where the pre-approvals for now, the values are for now, and closing date is not that far away, where the market, things haven't really changed much. The market hasn't changed much. The buyer's financial position hasn't changed much. Everything is kind of the same. There's less opportunity for things to go sideways. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. And if you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. York region, we're focused on detached properties only, and specifically detached properties for Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and Markham for week ending July 30th. Prices are pretty close between those three cities. We're going to start off with Vaughan for week ending July 30th. 20 detached properties were sold. Three of those sold at $2 million or more. Sales overall trending down. Now, average sold price sitting at $1,646,000. It's kind of way down from the previous week, but just let me let you know, the previous week, 14 properties sold at $2 million or more. And when you look at the year, like the most we've ever had is 10. There's lots of 3, 4, 5s, and 6. The current week we're in, July 30th, there was 3, which is more normal. So $1,646,000 is more within the realm of normality, not where we were previous week average price. And when we look at that, it's kind of difficult to say which way our prices are going. Like, we should just ignore that 1 week up there, but which way prices are going, it's difficult when you're only talking sales of, say, 20 to 30 a week. Average prices really have lots of peaks and valleys in them. But compared to last year, for the same week, $1,646,000 is 12% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,391,000 is 7% lower year over year. 20 were sold. A quarter of those, 25%, sold at list price or more. Listings looks like we're seeing fewer listings, which is normal at this time of year. Of all the listings available for sale, which is 617, all the detached, I keep saying that because I want everybody to be clear. This is just for detached properties. So there's no, the semis and towns are not skewing any of these numbers. So just for detached properties, there's 617 available. And when we look at how many sold, what we're basically saying is that only 3.2% of all available detached properties for sale actually sold. That's pretty low, 3.2% for detached. That's more of a condo type of percentage. Months of inventory jumped up to 7.1 months of inventory. Here's Richmond Hill. 20 detached properties were sold. 5 of those sold at $2 million or more. Sales trending down, normal at this time of year. Average sold price kind of looks like it's trending downwards. It's currently at $1,732,000. 1,732 is 2% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,647,000. It's lower, but it rounds off to a 0% change than the same week a year ago. 20 were sold, 20% sold at list price or more. 55 were listed. There's 573 available detached properties for sale. 3.5% actually sold during this week. Months of inventory, a little bit higher, but sitting at 6.6 months of inventory. Here's Markham. 27 detached properties were sold. 3 of those sold at $2 million or more. Sales are a bit more steady in Markham. We've seen that number 27 a few times, and the other weeks it's only off by 1 or 2 from the 27. So sales pretty steady. Average sold price is $1,680,000. I would venture to say that over the last month and a half to 2 months, kind of looks like average prices may be trending up in Markham. Compared to last year, $1,680,000 is 1% higher than the same week a year ago. The median price of $1,601 is 3% lower. 27 were sold. A high percentage, 41% sold at list price or more. That kind of plays into it's being a bit more competitive. If 41% sold at list price or more, and that percentage been rising, I can see prices creeping up a little bit. 59 were listed. Listings are trending down, and 5.6% of all available detached properties in Markham actually sold. Now, 5.6% is also not a ton that are selling. If 5.6% sold, it means 94 or 95% never sold, and that's just for the 1 week. But when you compare to a little over 2% for Vaughan and Richmond Hill, 5.6%, I mean, it's double the percentage. Months of inventory, bit more of a balanced market at 4.2 months of inventory. Here's a summary of months of inventory. Now you're going to experience, if you're selling or buying in Vaughan, Richmond Hill, or Markham, either a buyer's market or a balanced market. Price point, neighborhood, home type, all that will play into whether you're going to experience a buyer's market or a balanced market. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.